We call this May 20th meeting of the Winterville Planning and Zoning Board to order. We welcome each and every one of our board members. It's been a while since we've seen each other. I guess we're making up for it tonight for all those meetings that we didn't have enough on the agenda. So we'll look forward to speaking with you all again. We have excused absences, Ms. Peggy Clybourne. Anything else? Okay. What is the pleasure of the board regarding the request for Ms. Peggy Clybourne, excused absent?
Motion to accept her excusal.
I second.
It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor use the voting sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed use likewise same sign. Okay.
James Jones.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda for tonight. At a moment to consider. What is the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve. Second.
Then moved and properly second to accept the agenda for tonight's meeting. All those in favor use the voting sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed likewise. Okay, the next item, the approval for the minutes you have in your packet that you received last week and tonight to review for January, April, May, June, November, December, and February. Any questions? What is the pleasure of the board regarding the approval of minutes of the listed months?
Mr. Chairman, I've reviewed all the minutes at home in the communication we received, and I make a motion that we accept all the minutes as presented.
Okay, it's been moved to accept the minutes.
I second.
Second. Had a chance to consider. All those in favor, use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, likewise, use the same sign. All right, new business. Staff?
Okay, good evening, Planning and Zoning Board. We have a fair amount of items on the agenda today, but most of them are kind of somewhat procedural or changing some things in the zoning ordinance to update, bring us up to the 2020s. First, we have received a rezoning request or application. We're calling it a Yarborough rezoning. This is a parcel just north of Copper Creek, if you're familiar with that. And excuse me, I'm recovering from a little bit of a cold, so if there's something you cannot hear, then feel free to just raise your hand and ask me to repeat it as well. The applicant is Interbanks Engineering, Marie Pete, with us. This is, again, just north of Copper Creek and adjacent to Copper Creek, just north of Section 1 and actually east of Section 2 that they are currently building homes in right now. This is off of Reedy Branch Road. It's a 12.8 acre site that is currently zoned agricultural residential, or AR as we generally call it. They are proposing an R12.5 zoning, single family. Staff placed notification of the rezoning on May 6th. On the same day, we mailed out notification of the rezoning request and tonight's planning and zoning meeting. Those are to the adjacent property owners and those within 100. You look on the screen, this is a aerial image of the subject property. This is a map that shows in red, again, the subject property. The existing land use for this site is vacant agricultural land. To the north, it's mostly agricultural land. Our existing land use calls it single-family residential because there is a single home on that land as well. To the west of this property, single-family residential, as well as to the south. When you cross Reedy Branch Road, single-family residential there as well. So in this area, you have a lot of single-family residential. You also have some agricultural. When we're looking at the current zoning, this land is currently agricultural residential. To the south, in the green color, is R 12.5. To the north is agricultural residential in the tan color. Across Reedy Branch is mostly agricultural residential. You do have R10 conditional district that was approved earlier this year. And in the red, a small portion of commercial general business that continues to the north as you're going towards Main Street of 908. Future land use for this area shows suburban residential as the character area. If you continue west, you get into a conservation area due to environmentally sensitive sites. And once you cross over Reedy Branch, then it gets into urban neighborhoods, so slightly denser, as you guys are probably well aware by now, being on the board. You generally kind of step the density up until you kind of get to the center kind of hub of the city. It's kind of the idea. Suburban residential is characterized as primarily larger lots, single-family detached residential, generally 2 to 3 dwellings per acre, with larger lots, front and side loaded garages. Theoretically, an R12.5 would be 3.48 units per acre. However, once you place the road in there and other setbacks and things, then it drops. Another kind of dive a little bit deeper into the character area. The general character is larger lots, lower density single-family residential, flexible land use types appropriate for areas that are served by utility. The potential zonings that is recommended for suburban residential is typically either R20, R15, R12.5, or R10. Possibly R8 if the applicant is proposing open space and amenities. Again, this is a R12.5. Uses primarily single-family detached residential. Some of the land use goals of the town of Winterville are to reinforce the town's identity as a family-friendly community. By doing this, one of the strategies is to support rezonings to residential uses in the suburban, residential, and urban neighborhood areas as identified in the future land use. I received 3 emails. Actually, Don was sent 3 emails of concern for this rezoning. And I'm going to just briefly go through all 3 of them. I will say I've got all 3 of them in front of you, and 2 of them contain images that I do not have on the screen. It's mostly relating to drainage and standing water, flooding concerns, things like that. But I'm going to kind of hit the highlights of all 3 letters. Full letter. So the first letter opposes the rezoning. They have concerns with added noise to their property, traffic congestion, pollution, diminished quality of life for the current residents of the area, environmental and flooding implications, concerns about its effects on and its strains, creating strains on schools, roads, public services, and utilities, and removing the natural beauty of the area. The second letter didn't specifically have objections to the rezoning itself. However, they did note that they do enjoy the rural identity of the surrounding area. Their existing neighborhood, which is Copper Creek, They have identified concerns of stormwater design and its effectiveness. Have concern about that for this area as well. So they're asking that any future development on this land consider the design of stormwater and flooding, and hopefully perhaps a design that would alleviate such issues for their existing neighborhood, but certainly not to exacerbate their flooding concerns by this development. The third letter that we received was of opposition as well. The concern was of urban sprawl and design, traffic congestion, crime, pollution, operational costs of the town with more road, housing, schools, and utilities, waste disposal and increased costs, higher energy consumption due to more houses, the increased cost of infrastructure improvements and maintenance, the need for more schools that result in more our population, increased reliance on automobiles for transportation, the destruction of wildlife habitat and the removal of the natural areas, as well as the drainage issues in the Copper Creek, just south and west of this property. It's kind of a placeholder for council upon your vote tonight recommendation. Staff's evaluation, the 12.8 acre property is currently vacant with an existing stub street from Copper Creek to the west of this property, creating a seamless flow from the neighboring subdivision. The R12-5 zoning district is the ideal proposal in order to ensure a similar lot type for existing and future development of this area. Staff's recommendation is that the R12.5 rezoning request is consistent with the intent and the purpose of the zoning ordinance, the future land use plan, and is compatible with the existing development and trends in the surrounding area. Staff does recommend approval of the rezoning request for the 12.8 acres from agricultural residential to R12.5 as it is consistent with the comprehensive land use plan that we reviewed for rezonings. A brief kind of overview of the rezoning process. Tonight, the Planning and Zoning Board is reviewing this as a recommendation to Town Council. Ultimately, Town Council will schedule a public hearing for this request that we have received and hold a public hearing to determine the outcome. Does anybody on the board have any questions before we open up public?
I just have one question about the width of the proposed rezoning lot. Is the width of that lot the same, approximately the same width as the properties to the south if you were to consider one property street to the next property? It's approximately the same?
I'm looking at Marie and she.
Okay. Mhm.
Can we have you come to the podium and speak?
Yeah, if you'll speak so we can take the
Panel.
minutes and have it on the. Okay, yeah, we'll call you back up. But, are there any other questions prior to opening up the?
In
Thank
re- I have one. In regards to the drainage issues, I know the proposed development will have to meet certain restrictions or on drainage and ensuring that everything works, but with that said, would that, satisfy the concerns about drainage coming from that development? if it was created?
So you're absolutely right that, after, again, theoretically, after the rezoning, then they would likely turn in a preliminary plat. After the preliminary plat, then they would turn in construction drawings. At the construction drawing phase, we have engineers that review stormwater to ensure it meets town standards as well as state standards. So they will 100% have to, not only stormwater, but we have a huge team, we call it the technical review committee. We have a huge team of people that review different aspects of the development, and that is one aspect that is reviewed to ensure that it meets all regulations.
And with that said, I've noticed a lot of citizens have issues with drainage. Is that because those laws were not in effect, those rules were not in effect when those developments were created?
That's a great question. I'm just a planner. I'm not an engineer. I will say that, a lot of the older neighborhoods do not have stormwater infrastructure that is required today. However, still being in eastern North Carolina with it being so flat, it's a unique area to get a ton of rain at one time because it will take a while for the rain to find its way to. So with heavy downpours, certainly you'll see standing water from time to time. Once again, topography.
Along Reedy Branch Road, is a stormwater system just the drainage ditch, or is it piped?
Along the street itself.
Yeah. At the front of the property, because I'm assuming that there's gonna be a drainage easement that runs between the two neighborhoods,
I am.
and that's why,
It looks like it's piped. You're saying along Reedy
Yeah.
Branch Road. Yes, sir. It looks like it's piped right there.
and then between the property, the proposed the vacant property and the neighborhood to the south, that long property line, do you know if there's a drainage easement currently there?
I'm not sure. I'd
Okay.
have to look at the final plat for that.
Just a drainage ditch? Okay.
Absolutely.
Fair to say. It's always been fair to say that. They don't know open North Carolina, obviously, and where does it rain, flatness, is it not hit that as much, perhaps, as we see the negative?
Yes, I'd say there's certainly an aspect of that, especially in a area so close to the coast that we do have significant storms as well, with the flat topography. But you're right, it is something that we hear a lot about, and the town, I know our public works department has a ton of work and ideas and dreams about trying to alleviate something. I don't think that is necessarily a simple fix, and a lot of it is due to the nature of the flatness here. Now, the problem that we have here in our area is there's someone in the mountains who has flash floods, they may would prefer to have, it depends on where you live. There's definitely pros and cons for it to be flat with the rain, whereas The west, if you get the same amount of rain, you may have flash flood and things like that. So, so it really, I don't know exactly how to answer that, but it's just a town of Winterville. But I think it's something that a lot of Eastern North Carolina cities.
So my other part, my response, or question, would formerly zone, or in this case, the lot agriculture, does that perhaps make it more vulnerable versus something else that would have required?
That's a great question. I do not know the answer to that. There is a pre and post requirement for stormwater in which essentially the best way to kind of explain it is if I poured a gallon of water on my hand, the same amount of water that comes off of it right now has to be the same or less than after I develop onto my hands the water that comes off of it. So, you know, there are probably tons of calculations that Marie's making for stormwater and things like that I don't know stormwater quite well enough, other than if they have to follow all state requirements.
And I just have one more quick thing.
Yes, sir.
I noticed that there's a lot of interest in that area of town insofar as new developments. Is that because there's more infrastructure already developed in that area as opposed to different areas surrounding the city?
I don't think it's because there's more infrastructure. Now, there is infrastructure over there in that area. I will say right now in the town of Winterville, with the limited supply of lots, almost, I mean, inexistent right now. We've only got a couple of neighborhoods that really are building houses right now. And with the high demand, anybody who's willing to sell a chunk of land right now, developers are looking for it. So, yes, I think this is a very desirable site. However, I think anywhere within the jurisdiction of Winterville, again, that has utilities, then I think it would be a desirable site. I think there's tons of developers who are calling us nonstop looking for that. It's a very desirable city, and you know, a lot of people really love Winterville.
Quick question, can you clarify what utilities are there? I know there's gas and electric and water. Is there a sewer?
There's sewer that comes across this site. Thank you.
We'll give space for the applicant to come up and for board members to have, if they may have questions for the applicant. Well, at this point, you're addressing the board, and so. Are there any questions from board members for the applicant, the Yarborough?
My name is Marie. I'm owner and engineer of Interbanks Engineering, the applicant, and obviously I'm doing it for a developer and a group of people who have come together and purchased that property, or they're in the process of purchasing the property, and have requested that they make the rezoning prior to them closing it. I'm from Washington, North Carolina. More than that.
Are there questions from the board that regarding the representative for the?
So, to answer several of your questions regarding stormwater, phase one was done, and then phase two was done. And when those two came through, the original plans, they did that as a low-density project. And the reason for going for low-density project is because the environmentalists and the regulators in our world don't want you to pipe stormwater. They want it to drain through swales and grassed areas, et cetera, and not have a point source discharge. And the reason for that, and there's been studies that show that when stormwater runs off your roof and goes across grass, it tends to, I'm gonna call it be treated, but it tends to take the nitrogen out of the water. So where we have nitrogen, the rainwater that falls from the ground, it does pick up nitrogen as well as when it, sir?
No one said anything. Continue.
Oh, okay. I thought he said how. But anyway, so it picks up nitrogen. Nitrogen is something that had increased in the Neuse Basin and the Tarpan Basin. So therefore, because y'all live in the Neuse River Basin, there are rules that have been set in place. That first subdivision was put in as a low density, which is why you're limited on how much impervious area you can have per lot, including the road and all of that stuff. There are many low-density subdivisions that have the same type issue we're talking about. Unfortunately, those swales don't necessarily keep maintained. They build up sediment, and then they detain water, which an environmentalist loves that it detains water because that slows down it getting to the rivers and creeks. Therefore, it gets more treatment. You also have the other opportunity to go with a higher density and meet the same stormwater rules, but you then have to put in what we used to call a BMP. You may be familiar with those initials, best management practice. Now those are called stormwater control measures, and we have different SCMs that we would install. The developer on this project, when we ran the numbers, he said he couldn't build the house size to meet the low density requirements. So we are looking to put in a stormwater management facility, a pond or a wetland or a created SCM that would be, meet the requirements of the state. Stormwater control measure. And with that being said, then that allows you the opportunity to capture that water. It can be point source discharge, meaning you can put pipes in, take the water to, let's just say, a pond, and then it will leave the pond based on the design as well. Like you said, pre-post, you would have your pre-post. Now I will, I don't know how to get back to the picture. Maybe get us back to just the aerial. Yeah. That's good, right there. Yeah. So here's the existing phase one. This is an existing outlet ditch that whether it drains, what's that? It doesn't run. Okay. I understand because there's a pipe in here that's laid backward, which is typically the way farmers would have done it. They just throw a pipe in there, and that's the problem. But what we have to do per the rules, we cannot, since we are the downstream property owner here, this is upstream, this water runs this way. So there's a portion of this neighborhood that drains out this way and it doesn't drain. So there's concerns about stormwater problems on some of these lots because this doesn't drain like it should. Now, my surveyor hadn't gotten me much information back here in the woods yet, but I've got to get some more data there. My goal and what I have to do is I don't want to treat their water that runs through this well because then I'd have to make my SCM bigger. So therefore, I'm proposing to pipe and put a basin in here and pipe this all the way back to here. So that's off-site water, and we're gonna regrade the ditch to where it's off-site here. We will regrade back up along this property line, and put in a pipe that will carry that water designed to the city standards from this point in here off-site. I can't tell you what this existing ditch or any of these little swales that run between these lots. I can't tell you whether they will begin to work, not work. I don't know. I didn't have anything to do with that. It's a system that is installed. However, our plan is to pipe this so it goes around our site. Our site is going to be a straight road right through here. Like Dominic, you were asking, the width of this property is about the same as the width of this property. It'll be exactly the same with a road connected to here, bring it through, and then you got lots. These last two on the low side will be where your stormwater control measures will be, or it'll all be in one spot. That hasn't been designed yet, but this is the low side, and we can naturally bring all the water to this point where it would be treated and then dumped into this ditch, which the only impact to these people is where we're gonna come in and improve this off-site drainage by putting in a pipe sized adequately to carry that water and get it off-site. Ma'am?
We'll hold that for public comment.
Okay.
If you will, finish
Just-
presenting to the board.
Yes, sir. So just to explain, yeah, this creek right here is where we're gonna go to. Cliff Creek is actually out here. Yeah, it's back down in here. It's at the back of this phase 2 of that property is where the creek is. This is a creek.
Hey, any other question for the representative for the applicant?
Did that answer your question?
Yes, but I think I heard something that, I have a new question. When a stormwater system is designed for a new project, you have to account for existing problems, like on the north, south, east, or west, and in this case, obviously, we're talking about the same as well. Or is it an independent design?
We have to ensure that our design does not cause a backup on the upstream side. We are legally responsible, you know, like the Yarboroughs own this now, so where you're like, well, they're stopped up our ditch. That's on the Yarboroughs who, now her son has sold this property, or he's in the process of selling it. But our goal is to, and I will look at how much water we get in that ditch based on the conditions here, and make sure that I size my pipe so that we do not cause any backups of the upstream side. But I am, by law, required to allow the water to continue through the downstream side. Does that answer your question?
So, does the county open that may not be captured by a Barbara?
Let's get back to the
So that's something I'd have to really check with our Public Works Department about. I will say this subdivision, Copper Creek, was just, what, 7 years ago. Stormwater control measures are HOA responsibility. So the way they designed it, kind of what they've got now. It met the requirements. There, even sometimes when things meet requirements, we still have suggestions of, hey, we suggest you do it above and beyond, or we suggest you do it like this and this. At the end of the day, state tells us once they meet all their requirements, then but we can't hold them back at that point.
And the we in that sentence,
The TRC is really what I meant, a technical review committee, whenever we're reviewing a subdivision or design of anything. There are tons of times where we'll say, this is the requirement. This is what we suggest. We believe that this would be a better design, but at the end of the day, as long as they do meet requirements, then to some extent.
I do have a follow-up on Mr. Arlene's
Yes, sir.
question. The pipe that you, and the receiver that you would put in, take the water across the property, it doesn't, you have no responsibility for the swale. All you have to do is get the right depth for your receiver and the piping taking the water away, correct?
That is correct. Actually, that swale is not on our property. When that subdivision was developed, the swale, because they couldn't get an easement from somebody that they don't own the land from, the swale is actually in an easement along the back of those lots. So where we would connect would be, so I've got to make my inlet at a point lower than their swale as to wherever it is right now, that we will capture that water and take it.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the representative of the applicant? Thank you, ma'am. Are there any public comments at this time? We'll give you 3 minutes. Please state your name, your address, and
Hi, my name's Robert Watson. I live on Copper Creek, and my land abuts this new thing. I've heard so much talk now about the drainage, and to me, that was pretty much, should have been handled 7 years ago. But the guy that built the place, he just said no. Anyway, my whole complaint about any of this, whether it's here, whether it's 5 miles down the road, is just simply taking Winterville, North Carolina, a really nifty little rural town, and carpeting it with housing. I don't understand. I mean, this is why my wife and I moved here, was because of the rural nature of it. The fact that we could look out our back door and have fields, crops, it's just really nice. But there are all these other things. The gentleman back here, as he read through my letter, he pretty much hit all the high spots. But after listening to all of this, all of a sudden, I'm just racked with a bunch of questions. Am I done?
no, sir, continue. Still have a few minutes, sir, continue.
Anyway, the whole process sounds kind of convoluted, almost backwards. You have a guy that went out and now he's buying this property. I don't know, maybe he's buying it contingent on the fact that you agree that they're going to be able to do whatever it is they want to do out here. Otherwise, you know, he's stuck with something. If you say, no, you ain't going to do it, he's stuck. So I'm listening to when the various things take place. I'd like to sit down with someone to understand the whole process. I mean, like I say, with me, it's more a matter of destroying a town that I just absolutely have fallen in love with after living in Massachusetts. So, I don't know, I can't see any reason to go really any further than this. I did look up some numbers today, though, and they kind of fly in the face of what's happening here. I guess there's a lot of houses being built. I looked at some numbers of what the population, and according to the various things that I've looked up and looked into this, almost every source is saying that they expect the
30 seconds.
population here grow by about 1,000 people from 2020 to 2029. 1,000 people. My God, there can be 1,000 people there. I don't know how they come up with these numbers. And I also don't think anybody ever thought about this bloody pandemic that has just thrown the whole world into a dither. Anyway, I just say, don't allow it. Turn it down. Come up with some ideas on different ways to zone the stuff. Fewer houses per lot,
Time.
et cetera.
Any other public comment?
Good evening. I don't have anything prepared.
For the board, if you would, just state your name and
I'm
address.
sorry. Summer Foster, 272 Copper Creek. I'm gonna borrow this little pointer right here because I do want to show, so I live right here where that drainage ditch doesn't work. So my biggest thing is consideration of if this is allowed. My property personally, I cannot take any more water. If I do, I'm gonna have to get flood insurance. Because when it rains, and I'd be happy to share pictures, I've got plenty. You know, I have a built-in pool at times. Then I get mosquitoes from standing water, and, you know, it just becomes a real mess. So I understand, you know, moving forward and, probably going to happen. I have a feeling. I bought the house thinking one day that there would be houses back there, even though I do love looking at the deer and the geese and everything else that's back there, and would much rather look at that than another house, but also understanding progress. But please do not allow anything that goes there not to have sufficient drainage, because if it's not, like, seriously, I'm gonna have to do something different. When I was looking at the house, 5 years ago, my neighbor next door to me, or now my neighbor, comes out. I mean, I hadn't even put in an offer yet. He comes out and he says, "Why they're moving?" And I said, "Don't." He said, "Is it because of the water?" And I was like, I mean, that should have been the first red flag. I should have asked a ton of questions. Well, I did ask questions, but they said that the water, if this was my side of my house, that it would only come up to, like, where the gentleman in the bird is. So please just consider, you know, through this process that sufficient and proper drainage in this new section takes place. I understand the town itself can't do anything or won't do anything about what's currently in place, but everything in the future, whether it's this new neighborhood or somewhere else, make sure that there's proper drainage in these places. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comment? Address for the board, your name and address, ma'am? Your name and address for the board. We didn't hear it.
R-U-D-Y, Riley, R-I-L-E-Y.
All right, thank you.
The Copper Creek zoning is R-12-5. It would be, well, same size lot. That's correct. Roughly 3 per acre. Roads in there. So, Marie, ultimately, it takes it to the booth. Okay, absolutely.
Again, are there any other public comments? Mhm. Question for staff or,
No, I think Mr. Greenberg. The question is an HOA plan are required?
HOA is required.
Required.
and again, for the board, keep in mind that some questions we won't be able to answer until we have a plat presented for us. At this time, we're just considering rezoning. So there are questions that cannot be answered with regard to layout or any other structural things until we have a plat to review and consider.
Yeah, and that is probably a great distinction too. An HOA after this rezoning is not required necessarily, but once a subdivision is. Right, and I know that's what you meant, but.
All right, there are no other public comments, or questions for staff or the applicant or representative of the applicant. What is the pleasure of the board regarding the rezoning request for the Yarborough property?
I move the rezoning request be approved.
And it's been approved and properly second. For the sake of records, if you would, those who are in favor, use your voting sign. Are there any discussion?
I just want to state that we are looking at only the rezoning. The drainage issues that all of you are experiencing are not within the preview of this council. We make a recommendation to the town board. There's a public hearing at the town board, and that is where the decision is made. This is recommendation to the town board only.
We've had a motion to approve the, and properly second. For the sake of records, we'll ask that you use your right hand for a voting sign. All those in favor, using your right hand. Any opposed? Likewise, use your same voting signs of your right hand. Get that? Okay. Next item. Tobacco store and smoke shop ordinance.
Thank you. And
amendment.
before I move on, I want to say thank you all for coming. Anytime, especially Mr. Watson, you said someone to explain kind of the process. I, for whatever reason, thoroughly love talking about the process of how things are developed. So anytime, come and we'll chat about it. So they just made that recommendation right then. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So anytime you have any questions, though, just let me know. Happy to assist. All right. So as we move on, a lot of this is from here on out, kind of updating our zoning
Can you
ordinance.
either close the door or push them further out
Okay,
so we can
yes, sir.
conclude our business? We've been here long enough.
Okay, tobacco shops, zoning ordinance amendment. So tobacco shops have really changed since our ordinance has been created in the year 2000. What a tobacco shop was in year 2000 has really turned into a vape and smoke shops as we see them today. So with that, and to become more consistent with the city of Greenville as well as other cities, to help ensure a diverse economy and to help limit advertisements and exposure of smoke shops and tobacco shops to children and the youth, we are recommending some changes to our ordinance, specifically a change within the general business, central business, intermediate commercial, commercial neighborhood, and industrial zones. Two, is currently permitted as a use in all of those districts. We're proposing to change it to a special use. Special uses have to go to the Board of Adjustment for review. To general business and industrial with additional special requirements. As you see, actually it's a little bit hard. On your packet, you can see it a little bit easier, but This is just essentially showing us removing it completely from central business, intermediate commercial, commercial neighborhood, general business, and industrial as permitted uses, and replacing it as special uses. Again, special uses have to go to the Board of Adjustment for to general business and industrial zones only. We are adding or requesting to add special requirement or SR 46. This states that no such establishment shall be permitted within 1/2 mile radius of an existing like store. No establishment shall be permitted within 1,000 feet from the property line of existing or proposed public or private schools, child care or daycare centers, public parks, libraries, churches, residentially zoned districts, or any existing multifamily dwelling or single-family attached or detached dwelling. That no establishments shall sell any of the items described within the definition that's being created for tobacco, vape, smoke shop, or other chemically enhanced products use without obtaining approval from the Board of Adjustment for each individual item and obtaining an approved zoning compliance certificate that clearly states the intended sale of each item within the establishment. The measure of the distance separation shall be a straight line from the closest point of the building or unit at which the use is located to the other uses as previously stated. For approval, the applicant has to provide a straight line drawing prepared by a registered land surveyor demonstrating compliance of the separation requirement to be even considered for a zoning compliance. And this shall, all of these uses shall be considered existing, like the schools, child care center, if it's in existence at the time that the application is made. Are there any questions with this one?
The question is primarily for the locations that it's being removed. The existing ones, are those just going to be existing non-conforming now?
It will be, yes, sir.
So they'll just be phased out over time if they close?
If they close,
Okay.
that's correct, yes, sir. Unless they do meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance for us to.
Is this an existing issue that we have, we're addressing it, or we're trying to prevent an issue from happening?
It's a little bit of both. We have a couple of different locations that we're receiving a lot of complaints and concerns about. In addition to that, the city of Greenville has enacted a very similar ordinance. The concern with the town of Winterville, whenever something like that is established, is that new business owners will say, well, Winterville is so close and they don't have this requirement, so let's just go to Winterville and you know, load up Winterville, because it's the same market. You know, people driving up and down Fire Tower or wherever it may be. We do not want to become known as the smoke shop capital of Eastern North Carolina, nor do we want to become so specifically individually driven by one economic source.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Does this affect currently open vape?
It will not. So currently, open vape shops are able to continue the use without having to go through any type
Yeah,
of.
because I could think of one that's within like 300 feet from two that sell almost the same products. Walgreens on one side and Speedway on the other. Close, that's what I was wondering.
Yes, sir. If this was in effect at the time during that application was made, then it would not be a permitted use at that location, the one that I believe.
Stephen, I got a question. I'm not sure I really understand. Under the letter C, you've got no establishment may sell any items within the definition, without approval of the Board of Adjustment for each item. Markets change. If they're not going back to the Board of Adjustments, how do you enforce that? I think that you need something in there to enforce that.
So this will be the enforcement. If they do not, so let's say, they state they're gonna open up a convenience shop that's just gonna be for food. Once they introduce, a vape product in there, then they are no longer abiding by the zoning regulation of that, so then they are in violation of zoning by not going through this. So then they will have to go through the Board of Adjustment and obtain that special use permit if it is. So this is kind of the teeth to the requirement.
Well, wouldn't that require a citizen complaint? Because as an enforcement officer of the zoning, you're not going and looking, you've got a lot on your plate, young man.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
And I don't think
So,
you're gonna go into looking for all the products being signed off. How does this work?
Any establishment that is not abiding by rules, or really most violations within the town, are complaint driven. We do every now and then come upon things ourselves as we drive by or things like that, but generally it's complaint driven. And believe it or not, something like this is likely going to be complaint driven by existing businesses that have such a product, because they've kind of got a corner on the market after, if it is established, if that makes sense.
This would also include if they wanted another Walgreens someplace else, because I think they sell cigarettes, I don't know.
No, that is a amazing question. So, we actually, and I was working with Keen, our town attorney, through all of these. I probably should have prefaced. But within the definition of tobacco, vape, smoke shops, and other chemically enhanced products, we have a exemption for grocery stores, drugstores, things of the like that meet state industrial code, which is a state code that defines different businesses and uses. So if it is in fact, now a drugstore is one of them, a grocery store is another one, those are the main two that I can think of off the top of my head, then those will be exempt, because their main use is not to sell tobaccos and vapes and things like that. It's much different. But so the definition of this is carefully kind of written out to ensure that it is into businesses that are going for the vape shop.
So similar situation, you've got a bar that wants to commit 10% of its floor space to a cigar lounge. Is that considered an accessory use? Do they then have to come and do a special
No,
use permit?
yes, they would. That would be considered an additional use.
I got a question,
Yes, sir.
Stephen. So, just on the last, I think it was the last thing after each item and goes before the Board of Adjustments, where they have to get a land survey for the exact footage, it's got to be distance there.
Right, yes, sir.
Is that, does every business have to do that?
No, we have a few businesses that are required that within the zoning ordinance. Those are businesses similar to this that have separation requirements to put the onus on the applicant rather than the city for going out and measuring all of the
Sure.
businesses.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? What's the pleasure of the board regarding?
And I will say, I do have a public comment session kind of set up for this.
Any public comments regarding this?
I'm sorry.
Okay. Seeing there are no public comments regarding this request, what is the pleasure of the board?
I move the zone ordinance amendments be approved.
Second.
Any questions? You have a chance to consider. What is the pleasure? It's been moved in properly second. All those in favor, use your voting sign aye. Any opposed, likewise, using sign aye. None opposed.
Okay, similarly, internet sweepstakes, we currently have, and this is one that we actually already have requirements that the surveyor do a distance as well. We just kind of decided to kind of mirror the requirements of the tobacco shop to be similar to the internet sweepstakes. So again, the internet sweepstakes are already in our zoning ordinance, but this is to stay ahead of the ever-changing regulations by the state to ensure that future proposals do meet all local, state, federal requirements prior to opening. So we are requesting to change it as a permitted use within the general business and industrial zoning district to special uses, again, going through the Board of Adjustment for approval for such a use. This will also update special requirement 44. Again, to stay more consistent with Greenville, other cities, to help ensure a diverse economy. As you see right here, we are removing it from general business and industrial and replacing it as a special use within general business and industrial. Similarly, no such establishment shall be within 1/2 mile radius of an existing internet sweepstakes. No establishment shall be within 1,000 foot of the property line of public or private schools, child care, daycare centers, public parks, libraries, churches, residentially zoned districts, or existing multifamily dwellings or single-family attached or detached dwellings. Measure of the distance separation shall be a straight line from the proposed internet sweepstakes to all of the uses above. The applicant for approval of an internet sweepstakes business shall provide a current certificate and straight line drawing prepared by a registered land survey within 30 days prior to the application, demonstrating compliance with the separation. For the purposes of this section, the use shall be considered existing if it's already in use at the time of the application. No establishment, stores, or restaurants may have or install any internet sweepstakes devices or machines, or allow such an activity without obtaining approval from the Board of Adjustment and obtaining a zoning compliance certificate that clearly states the use. As Mr. Killian stated earlier, businesses change their kind of goals and design all the time. Before they can put a machine in there, they have to abide by this special requirement or else they're in violation. If there are any questions on this one, I have set up a public comment session on this one as well.
Any questions from the board? Is there any public comments? Seeing that there are no public comments, what is the pleasure of the board regarding the recommendation from staff?
Chairman, I make a motion, we accept the proposed amendments to the sweepstakes ordinance. Recommend to the board.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussions? There are none. We'll vote using your voting sign aye. Those in favor using your voting sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, likewise using the same voting sign. None opposed. Next item.
So within our zoning ordinance in the agricultural residential district, there's always been a little bit of a strange component in which in agricultural residential district, as a special use, you can have multifamily and duplexes. So theoretically, let's say someone like tonight, they got denied for R12.5. They could theoretically go to the Board of Adjustment and request a multifamily development on that land. Obviously, that is not a suitable site for multifamily development, so we're trying to get multifamily and duplexes out of the agricultural residential district because that's generally on the fringes of town where you want the higher density on inner parts of town is kind of a strange addition. I don't really understand it completely, but again, the agricultural residential district as defined in our zoning ordinances for low-density residential and agricultural uses, to maintain lots of sufficient size so that residential developments that are dependent upon septic tanks or sewage, or wells for water, occur at significantly lower density. In addition, the comprehensive land use plan, the areas that are existing agricultural residential are designated mostly as suburban residential or rural residential or conservation areas. Thus, multifamily developments are really at odds with the recommendations of the zoning ordinance and comprehensive land use plan because of that. So instead, if somebody has an agricultural residential piece of property and they wish for multifamily development, they would then come to planning and zoning and ultimately town council for approval of a multifamily zoning district, which is the proper way to go about such a request, rather than to the Board of Adjustment for such a, again, removing it as a special, as a special use within the agricultural residential district. It would remain special uses within multifamily residential, office and institutional, and central business districts with special requirement to, that's not changing. This will remove the reference of agricultural residential from special requirement number 2, since it would no longer be permitted within that district. Just to let you kind of get an idea of what I was referring to with agricultural residential, on this map, the tan represents agricultural residential. Again, this is kind of on the fringe of the city. You would generally want the more dense development in the center of the city, so we don't really want to promote multifamily without some type of really good design that is going to you guys in council for the approval, rather than findings of facts through the Board of Adjustment. In addition, this is a future land use map. You can see kind of the yellow outline with the green conservation area kind of follows where you find most of the agricultural residential, and the future land use plan is suggesting lower density residential in those areas. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer. I have set up a little public comment session for this item.
I do have a question. Are there any existing multifamily developments or duplex developments out there in AR right now?
There are not. However, there is one property that a developer years ago kind of figured this out, and it is designated for a multifamily, and it's not in the worst location, so I think the town has really lucked up and been lucky because of that.
But you're saying this removes that loophole?
It would remove that loophole, that's correct.
But
Yes,
that
sir.
other one stays in effect.
That other one is already approved for, whether it does not have the ability to.
All right, are there any public comments? Seeing that there are none, what is the pleasure of the board regarding the recommendation of staff?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Been moved in, properly second. What is your pleasure by sign of I vote? All those in favor, you vote a sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, you likewise, same sign. None opposed. Next item.
Okay, the next item is exactly the same as the multifamily residential. We allowed two-family, or what is essentially duplexes in simple terms, within the agricultural residential zoning district. I'm not going to go through the definition of the zoning ordinance AR again, or the comprehensive land use plan, but two-family or duplexes would be at odds with the recommendations of the zoning ordinance and the comprehensive land use plan. They would have to go to you and ultimately council to rezone if they did wish to have a duplex development on their property. So it's still available, it's just through a different means or appropriate means. So we'd be removing it as a special use from agricultural residential. We would be removing the reference of agricultural residential from the special requirements number 2 as well, similar to the previous. If anybody has any questions for that one, please let me know.
Questions? Are there any public comments? Seeing that there are no public comments, what is the pleasure of the board?
I move that we accept the variance language ordinance amendment. Recommend it to the board.
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, use your voting sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Using likewise. Aye. Okay. Report from staff.
We've still got one more variance language.
Number 5.
Yeah. This one's very simple. This is a state requirement. The state has changed the criteria in which you vote on variances. So this is just to put the language that the state requires in our ordinance. We actually have to abide by it, whether it's written there correctly or not. But staff recommends amending the proposed new standards that the North Carolina state requires while reviewing a variance. The new language would state variances when unnecessary hardships would result from carrying out the strict letter of a zoning regulation. The Board of Adjustment shall vary any of the provisions of the zoning regulations upon showing all of the following. One, that the unnecessary hardship results from the strict application of the ordinance, that the hardship results from conditions that are particular to their property, the hardship is not a self-created hardship, and that the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such that the public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. In addition to that, so that is the language that is required nowadays. In addition to that, we are also recommending, this was a kind of a suggestion from the School of Government to place a kind of note, and what we would place is this important area right here. It says, important, the applicant bears the burden of presenting sufficient factual evidence to support findings of facts that allow the board to reasonably reach each of the required conclusions in accordance with the North Carolina General Statute 160D-705. If the applicant fails to meet that burden, the board has no choice but to deny the application. This is kind of a FYI for people who are going to a Board of Adjustment variance case, to let them know that it is your responsibility and requirement to bring all evidence necessary. If anybody has any questions, happy to assist.
With regard to the language hardship, how is that defined as undue, the language itself, definition of hardship?
Yeah, a hardship is essentially something within the town's rules that are extremely unique to that property. And I'll give you the perfect example of it. So some of the properties around the downtown area were subdivided well before our zoning ordinance was established. So there may be some lots that are in a shape or size that you could not place a home on that structure while meeting the required setback. So let's say that the front yard of an R6 zoning district, because it's a small lot that's never been built on, they can only meet 19 foot instead of the 20 foot, for instance. That would be a great candidate, and that is a great hardship to say, look, this is an old lot. I was given this by my great-great-grandfather, and there's no way that we could ever build on this lot without a variance. That's essentially what a hardship is.
Are there any public comments? Seeing that there are none, what's the pleasure of the board regarding staff recommendation? All right, any discussions? Been moved properly second. All those in favor, use your voting sign aye. Aye. Any opposed, using likewise signs aye. Unopposed. Anything else?
And that's all we have tonight. I will give a brief report from staff. Right now, we have received construction drawings and are currently reviewing these on the technical review committee level for Blueberry subdivision, which is located on Church Street Extension, Southbrook subdivision, which is located right adjacent and south of Pitt Community College. We have also received preliminary plats, which are currently under review from the technical review committee for Southbrook is actually the UNC property on Church Street. Preliminary plat, Farmstead is the one just south of Pitt Community College. We have received a preliminary plat, Mill Street Towns, which is a townhome proposal just south of 11 at Main off of Mill Street, and a preliminary plat for Quail Trace, which is Reedy Branch Road. It's a rezoning that we saw very recently with R10. Currently, we have Eli's Ridge Phase 5 under construction. Cornerstone's last phase is under construction. Filigrane Phase 3 is under construction. So we have, though we really need some lots right now because we don't have any on the way. Commercially, we have a storage complex proposed at Reedy Branch that's under technical review. Pitt Community College welding building that has just received approval from the technical review. Beautiful facility, isn't it? If anybody has any questions, I'm happy.
Just one, any new plans for town infrastructure expansion further out?
Not that I know of off the top of my head, but I need
Okay.
to get you in touch with our public works director. He would definitely be the person to kind of chat with on that to see what the future brings. Thank you all tonight. I know there was a lot. But
Are there any other comments from board members? All right. There being none, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Been moved and properly second. All those in favor, use your vote sign aye.
Aye.
This meeting stands adjourned. All right.